Welcome to Therapy, Tech, and Takeout. We're an entrepreneur and therapist exploring how technology is shaping mental health and what it means for how we live, connect, and care for ourselves. I'm Toni Teixeira. I'm the therapist.
And I'm Jackie Toll. I'm the entrepreneur. How are you doing, Toni?
I am doing fantastic. I am coming off of a really special weekend. I don't know if I told you, my daughter got married.
You didn't, but I saw all of your Facebook posts and they looked
You too.
fantastic. Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
congratulations. That's
Thank you.
wonderful.
It was just an amazing, beautiful day, and we actually had a mother-daughter dance. She danced
Nice.
with me, so it was really touching and moving, and the
I love
waterworks
that.
happened.
I can't even imagine.
So yeah, so I'm feeling really good, and she had beautiful weather. It was down by the beach and blue skies.
Well, that's wonderful.
It was really nice. So how about you? What's happening for you?
Good. I helped my daughter and her girlfriend move down to Jacksonville so she can start her clinical rotations coming up next month. So that was a pretty exciting but exhausting weekend for
Wow,
me.
that's huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, big milestones. I have we moved the big stuff down last weekend. I'm going to go back up and we're going to move the last bit of it, I think, this coming weekend.
Right.
Yeah, big stuff. And then all my younger guys are both home from college, so that's exciting. And I haven't gotten to spend as much time as I would want to with them between work and then this other stuff. But I am looking forward to getting some real good hang time with my younger two
Yeah,
that
yeah.
are still home with me for a few months out of the year.
Yeah, it was cool to have because of the wedding, my other daughter came in too, so
I
we got
bet.
to have
Yeah,
some bonding and fun connecting time. So I love the summer for that. I used to love when the kids would come home for the summer. Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. And it was cool. It was the second time in a short period of time where my ex-husband and his wife and I have kind of like teamed up to do something.
Hmm.
And they met us in Jacksonville and we're huge help. And, it's just so nice to kind of be
Yes.
past the
Yeah.
adversarial parts
Yeah.
of like divorce and things like
Right.
that and to really start to like heal.
Yeah, I really feel you on that. We have the same thing,
That's
it's
awesome.
my kids have step siblings. They're siblings, but they're step siblings, and they come over and they hug me and kiss me and say hello to me. Their dad did the ceremony, so that was really
Oh,
quite beautiful. So it was a real family effort, and
yeah.
that not having that adversarial thing, it's just amazing to be in that space, isn't it?
It's
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm overwhelmed by it, like, when when I'm in the middle of it, especially when I'm exhausted and, like, everything's a little bit more raw because it's just like, this is,
Yeah.
what we're supposed to be doing, and, like, that we can come
Right.
together for, like, the betterment and actually enjoy spending time together too, like, it's not a chore, it's not something we're getting through, it's like,
Right.
it's
And
just a
it's
really, really
about
nice
the
thing.
kids, and it's
Yeah.
about enjoying them, and when you come together as a team to
Yeah.
work, to kind of like, be with your kids, it's a different perspective. And, it's funny, I'm not surprised that we're very similar in that way, that we have some similarities in being able to create like a connection and an extended family.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. This past year has been such a wonderful year for that. And I'm really lucky. And I think it is all of the wonderful women friends I
Yeah.
have in my life that's kind of helped me get to a place where I'm a lot more open to those type of and seeing things from those perspectives and looking at that longer term plan. Like hopefully when there's
Yeah.
a wedding one day down the road, I want to be able to have what you had.
Yes.
And that,
Yeah.
that the foundation for that started, recently and it's really nice.
Beautiful. Yeah, yeah. I feel lucky too. Thank you for
Yeah.
sharing that with me.
Likewise, that's amazing. Well, I'm so excited for the article that you picked out this week because it was terrifying.
Terrifying is really the word. It really
I mean, I know
is.
that's not a really
Yeah.
gentle transition for all of you,
No.
but I'm so excited to jump in and talk about it because I was just shocked from so many angles. So do you
Yeah.
want me to give the article title?
Yeah. Yeah. Give the article
Sure.
title and a little background about that, please.
Absolutely. So it's
Sure.
from Proof News and it's called Woman's Talkspace Therapy App Sessions Exposed in Court. And basically, like Talkspace collects and stores all, not like the summaries of your communications, but all of the details of your communications. And then those are potentially discoverable as
Hmm.
part of a court action.
Right. And it's all the communication. So Talkspace is a platform. I have to tell you, well, full disclosure here, I did not work for them. However, in 2012 when they started, I was kind of recruited to work
Mhm.
for them as a therapist, and I went through the whole hiring process, even to the part where I gave them like my bio and all this stuff. And I got an icky feeling. I don't know at what point, but I decided, nah, I don't want to do this. So they have a platform for not only like there are other platforms that do this where you can message your therapist back and forth, but you could also have a full session. You can have a video session where it would be recorded. So they have not just kept the text messages that go back and forth, but also video and any audio recordings that,
Yeah.
because people can message audio record, make an audio recording as well. But if anything was done on a platform, that video platform, that was saved too. So they are one of those companies that offer to their clients. When they started, I think they were like out of network. You'd have to pay like kind of a monthly fee and then you could see your therapist. And it's called asynchronous therapy, where somebody
Mhm.
can send the message and then the other person can answer it. So, and they offered that. And then they eventually got into I want to say bed with the health insurance companies, which they did, so that they became really, really, huge. I think they're selling for $835 million
Yeah,
dollars or something
$1,000,000,
like
yeah.
that, the
And then
article
they got
said.
into the schools.
And they got into the schools, helping teenagers, New York City schools, and some of the other big cities as well. So the
Yeah,
big problem here is that because of this particular case, we've all discovered that they have kept all of the communications, video recordings, audio recordings, and text messages that have gone back and forth, which is personal
yeah,
private information connected to somebody's name. This is, kind of there's some debate about whether or not this is a HIPAA violation. We can get into that. But not only is it upsetting, Jackie, that they did that, but their ultimate goal was to take that and to create therapy companion bots
yeah, rolling out later this year.
rolling out later this year. And they have like kind of in their privacy notification agreements, informed consent, people who are signing off on that, which they find people don't really read their consent forms, that they may use their information to develop new products
Yeah,
without saying that it's an AI tool. So this is like just horrible on so many different levels. One is the therapist didn't even know that this
right.
was happening. I was solicited by a company at one point to work with them on creating a
I remember
chatbot.
you saying that, yeah.
Yes, and of course, and I said no, but I had a choice about whether or not I was going to do that. There are
Right,
these therapists who don't even know that their expertise is going to be used in creating this, and they're not even going to be compensated for it, are they? Right?
right. And that their clients' information is so available and, yeah, out there. I had a free, back when I got my, yoga teacher certification and I signed up for my insurance, they sent me something, and they still send me emails for a free month. I don't know if it's Talkspace or one of the other things, but it's that asynchronous sort of communication, and I was
Yes.
always like, "Oh, I wonder if, like, that would be something I'd be," but I've never done it, and I'm super glad now, because like, imagine you're, like, putting all of your, like, vulnerabilities, out there, and you're like, "Oh, well, I'm not doing it with AI, I'm doing it responsibly with a therapist who's, like, credentialed and vetted and all that stuff," and then, the violation on both sides for the, I'm sure the therapist felt and the patient felt, like.
Right. I mean, it puts you in a bind. Now, first of all, it's not like Talkspace is not going out and sharing this information with everyone. What happened in this case was it was a woman who was suing the company against pregnancy discrimination. So through discovery, the company she was suing she said she was in therapy, so they had every right to ask for therapy notes. I mean, therapists can be subpoenaed.
Yeah, see, this is
We
something I didn't really understand either until I read this article.
Right, right. So there's confidentiality. Everything you talk about in therapy is confidential. If there is a subpoena, and even our ethical code is we are going to do as much as possible, even if there is a subpoena, to guard against actually delivering those notes because it's in our ethics to protect our clients. So will they take a summary? What is it they really need? If when push comes to shove, kind of the nitty gritty of it is we're going to end up giving our notes when the legal system is pushing it. And in some case, it behooves our clients because they may be suing and they want us to share the notes, and that
Right,
might
and they
be
can
why,
consent to that, yeah.
right, they're consenting to that. In this case, that company went to Talkspace and asked for everything they had, and they had all of this.
Well, and
And
the company
because
had
they,
provided the access to Talkspace too. So it's like,
yes,
here's a therapy app to help you. Oh, and then we're gonna go and we're gonna, subpoena that information and use it against you in a lawsuit. That was, I mean, it felt dystopian.
makes it a little bit even more scarier because of the connection between, that can frighten people sometimes. Like I have had clients say, well, this is my insurance company and my company knows that I'm using this insurance company. Like kind of they feel there's some kind of connection
Yeah,
and feel like almost maybe their company does have a right to know what's going on because they are paying for the insurance. So it's a similar kind of situation, which by the way, they don't have any right to that information just
right.
because you have health insurance with your employer. So I don't know, I'm getting all over the place, but
No, there's so
just
many places to go with this because it was just jarring from every angle, the tech angle. But I mean, so if this stuff is accessible to be subpoenaed, this stuff is accessible to a hacker also, right?
good
I
point.
mean,
Right.
like this stuff exists in a place where people can get to it. And it's so much different than like your therapy notes. You're not writing down every single word of what a person
No.
says and then what you said back. I mean, like that's therapy notes are usually, from what I understand, concise.
Yes, concise. And we're also doing everything to safeguard and protect our clients, even when we're doing our notes that are even
Right,
what we
because you
think are
know
for
there's that
us,
possibility. So
because
you're
we always know that's a possibility. So, I'm an ethics nerd. So, one of my favorite things every year we have to take ethics courses as part of our recredentialing, renewing our license. I love this one particular trainer. His name is Frederick Reamer. I think he's a lawyer and he's does a lot of training on ethics for social workers. And the one thing that got to me, Jackie, he said, anything that you're writing, just imagine it on a screen in a courtroom with,
yeah.
like an overflowing courtroom. And if you don't want anyone to see it there, then you don't want to write it down, right?
Yeah.
Now, we have to balance out the truthfulness because we're not making up stuff in our notes.
Right.
So we have to really say what's happening, but there are ways to say what's happening without detailing every, kind of last detail of what people are saying and exposing them potentially. So therapists who might have been doing this asynchronization with their clients, asynchrony, kind of telecommunicating, may have also been keeping notes and they might have been doing a good job with that,
Right.
protecting their clients, and they had no
No
idea
idea.
that, so, we're always talking about like who's responsible. Those therapists, their licenses could be on the line when even though they did everything to contain and really protect their clients, but the company that they were working for, unbeknownst to them,
Yeah.
was saving all of this because they were going to use this communication to create an AI therapy companion bot
Right.
for people. So it really puts therapists in a bind. I mean, this is a vulnerable population, people who are looking for therapy.
Right.
They're signing off on informed consent. Maybe they're kind of feeling vulnerable. They're not really reading it. Just takes advantage of so many people, so
For
many
sure.
people.
For sure. Like, I found the other thing that was disturbing too is like how it's not really the information that's being used to train and perhaps, develop other products is like kind of anonymized, but that there's so much rich information about your life in it that it doesn't take any real effort to actually tag it back to the person. And
Mhm.
and that feels like it should be illegal. That feels like it should be something you should be able to opt out of at least. Like the EU, it said allows people to opt out of this data capture. And it's like
Yes,
the tech
we don't.
right,
The
and we
US
don't.
doesn't.
Right.
Yes.
That's wild. And the companies know that nobody reads those. There's too many of them. I saw some statistic if you like actually read all of the things, like how many days of your life that would like eliminate. And so it's really,
Right. Right. And with therapists too, part of our, protection or, support for our clients through the process of starting therapy is we go through informed consent. I talk to my clients about confidentiality. I talk to them about reasons that confidentiality might be broken and what that means for it to be broken. And it's really usually to get help,
yeah,
for them or for someone else and that need and even talking about the risks of therapy. You can feel really good when you're in therapy or you can feel really lousy, and
right.
to be mindful of that, there's all these things to be concerned about, or not concerned but to think about, like to
Right.
be aware of.
Aware of, for sure.
So these therapists that were doing their informed consent with their clients, they omitted this whole piece because they weren't aware, again putting them in an ethical situation,
Yeah.
a conflict there that they're not even aware of. And it's our responsibility to due diligence and to be able to create that safe space for our clients. So if something gets omitted and we don't know, how responsible are we for that? Did we know we were
Right.
supposed to know something that we didn't know we were supposed
Yeah,
to
how
know?
how is that possible? Yeah.
How is that
Yeah.
even possible? I didn't think in a million years something like this would happen, Jackie. I was really blown out of the water.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder, what type of like protect like HIPAA
Mhm.
doesn't seem like that's enough here.
Well, HIPAA is really enough. If you read, my gosh, pages and pages of all the sections and parts of HIPAA, it's a very well detailed document on the compliance. And HIPAA, it's the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, which is really about information that's held and transmitted. So
Mhm.
there's rules about how it's held and transmitted in any way, shape, or form,
Yeah.
paper, digital.
I used to do
And
electronic health records. So,
yes,
yeah, like
all health,
so important in all
physical
of that. Yeah.
and mental health records. Now, it's what is important is that it's not just any generic information, it's the information about the health and the connection to who the person is, their personally identifying information. If you can put those together and that is accessible, then you're not being compliant with this act.
Right.
Now, I think the way Talkspace got around this is they said they had a de-identification so that there was information, but you couldn't identify who the person was. So HIPAA has very specific rules around de-identification. I mean, it's a very specific document about what compliance looks like. So they did the de-identification, but they didn't really do it in a way that it wasn't possible to re-identify. Like you could do that.
Right.
And in this case, they did so that they could give that information instead of saying to this other party, hey, we've de identified all our data, so we can't really recreate it.
Right. You can just have
Somehow
the therapist notes. Yeah.
they recreated they re
Right.
identified the person with the material. So that's kind of the loophole with HIPAA is, that de-identification piece. If it's de-identified, it's okay. But as you mentioned earlier, even without that person's maybe their name and like address and phone number and all that stuff, sometimes within the material, you can figure out who that person is.
Yeah, for sure.
Especially if it's a special case and there's something this is why they say a doctor shouldn't talk about their patients in an elevator, right?
Right.
With another doctor, even though they're not saying names. Well, you don't know if the person's next to you is that person's mother or father or
For
sister
sure.
or brother. So when you said, hey, they got a, whatever score on an assessment,
Yeah,
that person might have that information and know that you're talking about their,
for
their
sure.
loved one. So we have to be really careful when we think we're de-identifying people and we're talking generically, or think we're talking generically about a patient or a client. There may be enough information to actually identify them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that there's no real visibility into their de-identification process for any of us, right? Like, correct me if I'm wrong, but I also kind of remember reading in the article that there were some concerns that they were like selling some of this data to Facebook and Google.
Facebook and Google for ads, like to
Yeah.
kind of understand, I guess, consumer behavior.
Yeah.
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 Yuck.
Yeah, that is really yucky. That Talkspace said that they amended their data collection policy, but there's still privacy issues. I think that article clearly said there's still some privacy concerns about what they're doing with that information.
Well, and how
And by the
valuable.
way, all the
Yeah.
everything, when we talk about transmission of information, it's past, present, and future. Like the potential that any of this can be released anytime in the
Right.
future. Right.
Yeah. I mean, how helpful is a platform uh that's supposed to be a safe space if, you know, you're worried that everything you put into it can be, you know, released, because of, a
Yeah.
subpoena, or because of a hack, or because somebody puts two and two together and takes this anonymized data and ties it to you.
Yeah.
I
It can't
mean,
be.
right?
It's not a safe space. And we also really we want people to make their own decisions with the best information possible. We're really taking self-determination away by not sharing that. There may be
Yeah,
people who may say, "Yeah, okay, I don't care," but they get to choose whether or
right.
not they want their information to be there. That could feel like a safe space for them.
For sure.
That's why we do informed consent, because I might tell someone, "Hey, these are the reasons I break confidentiality," and they may say, "Okay, I trust that. That's okay. That sounds good." Or they may say, "I don't. I don't know if I really want to do this."
Yeah,
And they change their mind. It's their self-determination. So we can't create a safe space if we're not being upfront, honest, and also including that self-determination piece
for
in
sure.
that, where they get to choose what feels good and what doesn't feel good. So we're not creating safe spaces
Well, and it's interesting too
in this way.
because no, not with this. And I wonder how many other platforms, because I would imagine as a therapist, if I believed in the value of the asynchronous platform structure, and I thought that was something that is useful for people, and I wanted to be able to provide that, I'd imagine you'd want a platform that provided a way to do that HIPAA compliant where you're not just on your cell phone, right? Like, that's probably not the best idea. And so like these platforms then spring up to address this need, but then have all of this data. And it seems like a really unfair catch 22. Do you think that there's much value to the asynchronous
So
type of
I
therapy?
think that a lot of these companies popped up. They're venture capitalists, right? They popped up to create what they felt were fulfilling a need,
Yep.
that people needed care that was accessible,
Which is a need.
which is a need. And maybe like to feel a little bit more anonymous, like maybe I can get help and I don't really like
I don't have to
I
look at the person. Yeah.
Right. Before I started my private practice, I worked with one of these companies, not Talkspace, with a different company, and people could talk over the phone and feel like, they're getting therapy, and they didn't have to have a video camera on, and that was okay. Like they didn't have to go into an office. And
Right.
I got that. I
Yeah,
got that like privacy kind of feel for them.
for
In
sure.
fact, they may feel like there's more privacy because they get to do that, and there might not be.
Right.
What happened, I think, and what makes this insidious is that the desire to make this accessible to people slipped into this area of, let's start creating other kinds of
Products.
platforms, or this AI chatbot that could be helpful maybe, but I think it's really based on money.
Yeah.
Who's making money here, and the ethical part of it was not really considered. The fact that they did this, and without the therapist knowing that it was happening, taking advantage of them and their expertise, and the clients didn't know, that is a breach of ethics. and
Yeah.
they should really be held responsible for that. I mean, that's my personal feeling. It's surprising that it's getting sold and that another company is going to buy this,
Right.
knowing what just happened. It feels like they're really ignoring the harm
Mhm.
that has been done. And now another company is getting it. What are they going to do with all that data? All those
Right.
chats are there right now. They're all kind
Yeah.
of sitting there. There's video sessions. That's really
Right.
icky too.
Yeah.
Who's looking at that? What are they
Right.
going to do with that?
With children.
Children, teenagers. Yep.
Yeah. The elderly, the vulnerable.
Yes.
Yeah, I think, and the other thing that really makes me mad is that $835 million or whatever is gonna be exchanged for this stolen, in my opinion, information and expertise, and it's not trickling down to any of the people, right? It's not trickling down to the therapists and making their practices stronger or more resilient, and it's not trickling down to the people who, need accessible care,
Right.
and that's
This is
pretty
kind of like, big business like Amazon, Walmart versus, the Miss May on the corner who had the little corner store. We had Miss, I
yeah,
think, I think her name was Miss May. She had like the little corner store, right? The therapist who runs the private practice is faced with the big guy, these venture capitalists and these big companies that are doing this, and it's making a lot of therapists, of course, kind of nervous and
yeah,
worried about the future of being in private practice. They're losing clients to some of these companies, and I also think it's changing the face of the professionalism of the practice, because they are hiring people who are very young, who are new social workers, that some of them have no business working on a platform where they're not getting any supervision.
right,
They're new therapists who are working on their licensure to work independently, which is a thing, and it's
right,
okay, but
yeah,
you need to be closely supervised.
for sure,
They're overworked. They're usually working 35, 40 hours a week, but most of that time is face-to-face time. If they want to get paid full time, they
yeah,
have to see 40 clients.
wow,
I would be a one bone Jackie if I had
yeah,
to see
I couldn't
40
even
clients in a
imagine,
week.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. So they're actually creating, more burnout for therapists, but that also puts clients in harm's way because they don't have therapists who feel refreshed. They're more burnt out. They
right,
might
they're
make
not
mistakes.
trained, yeah,
They're not trained.
or overseen perhaps, yeah,
Yeah.
I it makes me very angry
Makes me very angry. Yes. Yep.
because, yeah, I think that and again, it started with, I think, on some level, a real response to a need. There is a gap, and accessibility, and there is, I think, the need to explore perhaps alternate modalities to help care feel safe and accessible to people. And I think those are virtuous goals to have, but to capture all of this and to keep it from people and then to not do everything in your power to minimize harm is really unacceptable in my opinion.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
It is unacceptable. And the other piece is, really also for scale of what they're getting paid
Right.
for selling this versus how therapists are struggling because of these
Yeah.
big box companies that are doing this, that are paying their therapists, kind of low amounts of
Bottom,
money.
yeah, amount.
Yeah. Or working with insurance companies to maybe get them a little bit more money, but then the independent solo private practitioner can't negotiate the same rate
Right, right.
as the companies. They have the
And they
kind of the
funnel the
power.
business that way. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's really also causing a problem for this as a career,
Yeah.
and it's making it really difficult. We were talking, kind of going into this area too, to be able to afford going to graduate school and setting up a private practice. If
Yeah.
you're not getting paid a lot of money, who is going to be able to do that?
Right.
It's not going to be accessible to therapists of all cultures,
Right.
all
Right.
races
Backgrounds.
and
Yeah.
backgrounds and socioeconomic statuses.
Right.
It's going to only be accessible for people who have money or maybe have partners who can support them so they can go. That's not everyone. So now we're making becoming a social worker inaccessible to populations who we need to be part, sitting
Right.
at the table to be able to support, us. Right, like,
Right.
our diverse culture and society. That's a fear too, because it comes back to the money. If we look at that money trail and what's happening there, then we're also shaping the field to look
Yeah.
like a certain way.
That's
And it kind of becomes that, like, it almost feels like back in the day when women would have, like, just their little job for themselves, like it was like
right. It's
kind
like
of
a
a
hobby
little
kind of. Yeah.
hobby kind of thing. It feels like it could possibly turn into something
Right,
like
but something that
that.
you have to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to get your education for to be able to do. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And who's gonna be able to afford to do that?
Right.
Yeah.
And good, the PE companies made some more money. We can all sleep happily knowing that like 7 people got a lot richer. But yeah, I think that and we see it across not just mental health, right? Like, I mean, you see how this, these ventures bringing in the early practitioners and setting them up sort of in their own practice and like giving them a foothold into what they need to be able to pay their bills, but it results in substandard, oversight and, exploitative practices and just a whole bunch of bad things. And care is really one of those things that AI shouldn't be replacing. Like care is between people. Care is a or it's one of those things where, I would love if AI or, technology could do my laundry or, the stuff, right? Like,
Right.
I do actually like
Yes.
to do laundry, but like, that clean my car and like, or whatever, like do all of that stuff. But no, I'm
Right.
stuck
But
doing
not
that. And
taking
then I
care
get
of
like some
people.
garbage AI for my therapist. It's going to go spill all my secrets to Google for money. Like, I just, no.
It's
Oh,
mind blowing. So I do this. It's like, yes, it feels mind blowing, especially when you say it that way.
yeah,
Yeah.
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 I mean, would you suggest people stop engaging with Talkspace at this point with what you know?
I think you really need to be really careful if you're a therapist working for them or if you are a client looking for services, and to understand with eyes open what the implications are of entering into communication on this. It's essentially a platform that's connecting you with a therapist, but that therapist doesn't own the rights to your stuff,
Right, your communication.
your communication, and to be aware of that. Because if you work with a therapist in private practice, they have all
But you own your work
rights,
product. Yeah.
to all the stuff that happens in the therapy. That's built on your relationship with them, your understanding of, and their understanding of ethics and protecting that information. I think that people need to know that the therapist that they feel really connected to on these kind of platforms doesn't have the sole responsibility, and maybe even don't even doesn't even have the rights to all that information. It's owned it's owned by the company. So that is really something to be concerned about when you're entering into an agreement to work with a therapist on one of these platforms versus in private practice. So I would say I would caution people to be clear about that. If a
Mhm.
therapist is saying, "Hey, yes, we can work together. This sounds like a good fit. And by the way, I do all my notes through," and they're talking about a company that they're working for, that the insurance is going through there, or they're doing their payments through another company, not like the telehealth platform or the EHR system that the therapist has. But I would be really clear about that and say, "Oh, who is this? Who is this company?
Right.
How are they involved in my notes?" Some therapists really just talk about some of these companies as being like, "Oh, they just do the insurance billing for me." They don't really do that. They do a heck of a lot more. They're
Yeah.
seeing the scheduling, they're getting the notes of the clients,
Right.
They have to show that they're making the notes. They know who these people are. They have their, kind of their private information. So I would, as a consumer, and I like my clients to be good consumers of mental health, to ask questions.
Yeah.
If their therapist is working for another party, find out what that is and what that means, and then make a decision about what do you want to do about that, knowing full well that that therapist does not have control over that information, and that potentially it could be out there and it could be subpoenaed and be out of your hands, and there may be more information than you want it to be.
Yeah. Is a fair question to ask somebody if you're not sure if they're in private practice versus part of like a big conglomerate or whatever? Like, is the right question to ask like how do you earn your living? Or, like who do you work for somebody else? Does somebody else send you a paycheck for the work that you do versus, you're in business for yourself? I mean, is that kind of how you would
Yeah,
get at that question? It feels
that's
kind of aggressive.
that's really a good question, and that would come up really in the conversation, is the therapist would need to say something like, "Okay, you need to sign up on this platform.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I do my billing, and you're going to get some agreements from that platform, and it not from me."
Yeah.
So the distinction is, I would look at the privacy practices. So my privacy practices and informed consent says strong at the core counseling. That's the name of my business. If you are meeting with someone and you know their name and the name of their business, and you're signing documents that have a different name,
Right.
that is a red flag
Mm-hmm.
that therapist might be working for someone else. Because I was just thinking about how it might come up,
Right.
and that's
Yeah. How would you
probably the
find that out?
clearest that's
That's a
probably the
great point.
clearest way to really see, because the documents are going to say Talkspace
Right. Right.
or Headway, another kind of company that's out there that does similar kinds of things, or BetterHelp.
Mm-hmm.
Those documents are going to have the names of those companies rather than the name of the clinician
Yeah.
and the name of their practice. Great question, Jackie. Thank you so much for asking that one.
No, for
Perfect.
sure. Because I mean, this is all stuff that I didn't even know I needed to think about. But I'm really glad that you brought it to our attention because it's super important to
Yeah,
understand.
right. Privacy. It's about
Yeah,
privacy, right?
privacy and being safe, and
Yeah.
yeah.
So,
Oh,
and we could have talked about this for another hour, because there was also things
100%.
about how senators got involved in this, and, like, going into the school system and all of that. We don't have time for that now,
Not this week,
but
but I'm sure there'll be more great articles coming out on this topic. So hopefully there'll be ways to revisit it because it's so interesting. But thank you, Toni. Thank you to
thank you.
everybody for listening. Please, if you like this episode, share it with a friend. Hit like and subscribe. Those things really help. And if you really love us, write us a review. We will be back next week with an exciting new topic, and I will. I'm excited to see you then and catch up.
Take care. Thanks,
Awesome.
Jackie.
Take care,
Bye.
Toni. Bye bye. There we go.